We are walking in the light of God. We are walking in the light of God.
Welcome to episode number 11 in this series entitled Traveling with Pilgrims of Hope. I am Father Ron Will, coming to you from Precious Blood Renewal Center in Liberty, Missouri. Pope Francis declared the year 2025 as a Jubilee Year, with the theme, the Year of Hope. In this series, Traveling with Pilgrims of Hope, we are introduced to different individuals who have experienced hope and who are striving to bring hope to others. Pope Francis said, "A Christian is a man or a woman of hope who knows that the Lord is present and who finds peace and joy through working for the good of others." Pope Francis stresses the importance of always including others in our hope, of treating one another as equal creations of the God who loves us, of overcoming conflict and animosity through the force of the hope that unites us. Some days this will be easier than others, but it's always important to keep on trying. We can inspire others with our hope, and they can inspire us. I recently read an article by Terry Iverson in a publication by the Sisters of the Precious Blood in Dayton, Ohio, called Sharing and Caring. She reflected on how she experiences hope when she attends a conference of young people who are so on fire for their faith. Hope is found in their openness to have a conversation about faith, to ask questions, to pray, and to seek God's will in their lives. There is a freshness to them, a hopefulness in them, and their joy is evident. I think a lot of us hear stories about young people leaving the church, not interested in the church and what it has to offer. So I was filled with hope myself about the future of our church when I read her article. So I have invited Terry to have a conversation with us today about her experiences with young people. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for taking time to share with us today. I'd like you to take a few minutes to introduce yourself to our viewing audience. What is your work with the Sisters of the Precious Blood, and how did you get involved?
Well, I can be no other than the Holy Spirit. I don't know how else to answer that, except my work with the sisters. My title is Vocation Ministry Coordinator. And so what I do is I walk with women who are, they're trying to discern God's call in their lives, whether that be as a religious sister, as a single person, as a married person. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to lead and to walk, not lead, but walk beside. My husband, I am not a sister. I am a married woman with two adult children. And my husband, he's in the corporate world. And so when he goes to business gatherings, he'll say that they'll say, well, what does your wife do? And he tells them I'm a nun recruiter because he doesn't know how else to describe it. But that's not really what I do. I don't ever go out and say, try and recruit women. It's really more about meeting women where they are at and helping them, walking beside them, helping them discern, what is God calling them to? So that's what I do. My background is in youth ministry. I was a youth minister for 30 years. So I did that, really my whole professional life has been in ministry, but I did that for 30 years. And I thought, there were some things happening in our archdiocese, in our parish. And I thought, what, I think it's time for me to hang up my hat and just do some other things for a while. So I took a job managing a running store, and it wasn't very long into that I realized that I'm never going to be happy doing anything but ministry. And so I started looking for jobs and just kind of, nothing was really working out, and things that I thought I'd be perfect for, I didn't even get an interview for or whatever. And I finally sat down and I realized one night that, I hadn't really sat down and offered it to God. I hadn't really prayed, for God to lead me where I was supposed to be. And so I did that. The very next morning, I opened up my LinkedIn account And there at the top of the page was the position with the Sisters of the Precious Blood as the vocation ministry coordinator. And I got really excited, and I really at that time didn't know what it was about, but I just had this feeling that this was something that I needed to explore. And so I did, and they hired me, and here I am. There
Turning to
can be no
God.
other explanation. This is where I'm supposed to be because it wasn't something I would have ever probably explored on my own.
Okay. So turning your life, your search over to God had quick results. It worked a lot better than trying to do it on your own.
It really did. It didn't work well when I was trying to do it on my own. It was a long period of time that I was trying to do it on my own. So
Okay. So now you're helping youth uh, turn their life over in a sense to what is God calling you to do as opposed to they're searching, and I guess you're trying to point them, well, include God in the search or the conversation.
yeah, absolutely. I think our young people are so hungry. They're so hungry in a lot of ways. They're hungry for a lot of different things. And I think a lot of the distress, the mental anguish, the emotional struggles come from us not truly, or them not truly just understanding what God can do. And
Mm.
it's amazing when you're able to work with a young person to help them see that, the peace that they find, the joy that they find, the hope that they find. It's really an amazing thing. And there are a lot of instances in my 35 plus years of ministry that I could call on. There's one example, if you want an example. For a lot of summers, I took students on mission trips, right? And we were at a mission trip in Texas, and they told this group of students where they were going to be going. And I knew what was going to happen. And they made the announcement that the students were going to be going to the ARC, which is an association for they're going to be working with developmentally disabled adults. And I could see
Okay.
the faces on the students, the terror and the fear and the uncomfortableness that came over them. And so that night we talked about it. What is it? We let them voice those fears. And the next morning before they went, I didn't go with them the first day. We prayed with them. Oh my, they came back at the end of the day. When they left in the morning, it was a very defeated, terror, filled demeanor. But when they came back in the afternoon, they were excited and joyful, and they couldn't
Mm.
stop talking about their experience. And at the end of the week, they were sobbing because they had to leave
Oh
the
my.
people that they had met. And my favorite part of this story is one of the girls that was on that trip. She was trying to figure out what she was going to do after high school. I think she was a junior, and she just didn't know. Well, because of her experience on that mission trip with the people that she served, she decided to get her educational degree in special education so she could continue that work. So
Wow.
it's things like that that I think are give things like that that give me hope and joy to see someone transformed because of their experience with God.
I'm going to back up a few minutes
Okay,
ago. You said that our youth are hungry. And I was wondering, do they know they're hungry? Or do they
I don't think
feel,
I
I'm
don't
pretty satisfied?
No, I don't think they know they're hungry. I think they think they've got it all together. That's
Yeah.
the way teenagers are. They think they know it all. They think they're invincible. They think that this is just the way things are going to be. And so I really don't know. I don't think some of them, not all of them, I think some of them don't know what they're missing. They don't know what it is that they need.
How do you help them realize they're hungry for something more?
I meet them where they're at. For
Okay.
me, I think it's really important for us as adults to be open and understanding and to love them wherever they're at. Again, I think sometimes what happens, um, people will say things like, our students they're leaving the church, they're running away from the church, their faith isn't strong. And I disagree with that. I think so often as adults, we have expectations that we put on young people based on our own experiences. Me and in my mid 50s, I've had a conversion experience. I've had a time when, my faith became really important and really strong. And we try to, my spiritual life is fairly mature, over the years. It's grown and gotten stronger and matured. And I think as adults, sometimes we expect a 16-year-old to have the same kind of maturity in
Mm,
their spirituality that we do. One, they haven't lived as long, they haven't experienced as much, and they probably haven't had a conversion experience in their lives yet. So, how
mm.
can we as adults expect them to be on our level and to appreciate the same kinds of prayers and things that we appreciate in our spiritual life? So, I think that's one of the think traps that people fall into as adults is we expect the young people to be exactly like us, and they're still learning, they're still growing, and
Mhm.
and to meet them where they are. you know just because they haven't had a conversion experience doesn't mean that they don't have a lot of wisdom to share. And so I think that's really important to remember when we're working with young people.
That's a good reminder. And spiritually, it's something like our physical development too. You don't expect a child to run a 5K or there has to be a development. And spiritually, there has to be a development before you're even open to an experience of God. But once the youth that you work with, is there a way that when in the sense they're emotionally mature enough that you can lead them to an openness or to some kind of an experience where a conversion can happen or where an encounter with God can happen?
Well, absolutely. I think it's important to remember that not every single young person is the same. What
Mm,
what might be interesting and work for one person is not going to be interesting or working for the other person. And so I think it's important to provide a variety of opportunities for different types of experiences for young people. You may have someone that, they're really new in exploring their faith. And so for them to jump into something like a mission trip or a service camp or a, adoration or whatever the case may be, is probably not going to be where it's at for them. It might
mhm,
be a huge step for them to just come to a pizza party gathering,
mhm,
you know, where, at the end, we pray, we have a short prayer. It's a very short impromptu prayer. And for them, that might be their first experience of
mm,
that. And that might be, all that they're ready to handle at that point in their lives. Um,
mhm,
you might have another student who is ready for more, who is, for me, that was the social stuff. It was just kind of, okay, we're just going to get together, we're going to go bowling, we're going to do things like that, very light, not a lot of other people will call that fluff. I do not think it's fluff because everything that we do in ministry has a purpose. And so for those kinds of young people, that's where they're at. The next step is you might have somebody that wants to do a service act, it's kind of like, okay, I have a little base. I think I'm ready to do some good. We're going to go help people. We're going to go to the dining center. We're going to go to the homeless shelter and we're just going to serve, and include some discussions about faith and why we do this. It's always really important to me that students understand why we're doing what we're doing. Yeah, it
mm,
feels good to go and serve, but we're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it because Jesus calls us to.
uh,
And so those folks, things like there are students that are ready for that. Then there are students who are ready to really dig deep, to really spend time. So we'll do a retreat for them. We might create a retreat specifically for whatever kinds of things they're going through, and spend a couple of days really digging into scripture, really digging into what God is calling them to, what God is calling us to. And there's a rare few that they go beyond that. Like they're ready to go out and evangelize. They're ready to go out and share what they've experienced with other people. And so it's helping them find opportunities and ways to do that. It might be, to have them give a sharing at a parish. Uh, you know, meeting or after mass, a short one at the very end of mass, things like that. So I think that's how that's how I did do it. And not everybody does it that way, but for me, I find it works because, again, going back to, we need to meet students and young people where they're at. We don't want to force them to do something they're not ready to. And it's in being open and understanding that we can lead them where they're supposed to
Some of
be.
these social activities you named, I imagine bringing somebody kind of in, youth kind of in different, just in the same room or environment with another teen who's kind of on fire. There, that kind of maybe awakens there's something curiosity. I wonder what, what makes them tick. Why are they enthused about their faith? Maybe start asking questions.
Absolutely, that happens all the time. I was talking about those mission trips, and my very first meeting when we would have them, a lot of times what will happen is we had a couple students, some students go the previous year, and then they talk about it with their friends, and they try to get their friends to go. And so at the very first meeting that I ever have with parents and students, it was a year-long preparation in order to go on this mission trip. I expected you to meet with us monthly. So it was a
Uh,
lot of work, but at the very first meeting, I would tell both the parents and the students, I don't care why you're going. And I'd get a lot of funny looks. I don't care if it's because your parents making you. I don't care if it's because your friend invited you and you just want to get out of town, whatever the case may be. And then I tell them that because I know that your life is going to be changed. So whatever the reason you're here, you're going to learn something and you're going to grow because God has called you to be here. And it never failed to happen. Every single time they'd come back changed. So
mm, wow. That must be amazing for you to watch that, to witness that change.
it's why I do what I do. I mean, it's not the only reason, but it is the most rewarding part of ministry. There's a lot of ministry that is difficult and sometimes frustrating, but it is worth it so much when you see a young person who goes into something um, very shallowish in their faith. They just not real deep, and they come out at the other end and they are on fire and excited and
Mm.
joyful and just can't wait to see where God is leading them. It's the most rewarding part of ministry, in my opinion, for me.
I can see why that would be very motivational for you to see this happening. Oh, I want to help create another opportunity for another teen to go through something like that.
Yeah, it really is, and I think it's really important that we step outside of ourselves. I never, it's rewarding for me and it's motivating for me, like you mentioned, but it's not about me. If I thought that, I
Mm.
don't think ministry would be successful. I don't believe in the Pied Piper version of ministry. I think it takes a team and it takes us
Mm.
offering all of what we're doing up to God and allowing God to move and God to change and the Holy Spirit to enter in and be a part of it. And so, yeah, it's nothing I'm doing. It's all God, and I'm just the vessel, and I'm lucky enough to be able to do this.
And I think you're saying, why do you do it? Because Jesus calls me to do it, which is
Exactly.
similar to what you said a few minutes ago. You invite youth to do some service projects, and but you always include, now, why do we do this? At some point, help them understand this isn't to make you feel good or just a nice idea, but Jesus calls us to do this, calls you to
Exactly.
do this.
Exactly. I had no intention of being a youth minister. I was going to
Oh,
go to, when I was in college, I was going to get my master's in therapy and be a therapist and make a lot of money. And I
okay.
had been super active in my diocese at the time. And the diocesan director came to me. I was in my senior year of college, came to me one day and said, they're looking for a youth minister. And it was in North Dakota in this little tiny town in the northern part. And I looked at her flat out and I said, no way, they don't make any money. I don't want to do that. That same evening, I went to a birthday party and there was a priest friend of mine that was there. And he came up to me and said, Terry, my friend who's a priest in this tiny little town in northern North Dakota is looking for a youth minister, and I think you would be perfect for it. And I just kind of went, oh, you've got to be kidding me. But I heard it the second time. I didn't hear it the first time. And so sometimes God has to kind of knock me over the head. But anyways, that I absolutely believe that that was what I was supposed to do. And I absolutely, looking back, believe that everything that I had done prior to coming to work with the Sisters of the Precious Blood was preparing me for this ministry.
Hmm. Can I
And it's
ask
the same with students. Go ahead.
what was that tiny little town in North Dakota?
Grafton, North
Oh,
Dakota.
yeah. I used to live in North Dakota.
Where did you
Okay.
live? Linton?
Linton.
Yeah, I went there. The sisters had served there, so I went when I went for an event last winter. I went and visited. So
Very good. Now, you've been on a few kind of big youth events, conferences where the whole bunch of teens get in the same room and you witnessed one of those recently. Maybe you want to say something about that.
absolutely. This last weekend was the NCYC, the National Catholic Youth Conference, that's held every other year in Indianapolis. And I've been going to it for years, but there were 16,000 young
Mm.
people at this conference. And anyone who says the church is dead or the young church is leaving the faith needs to step in that room and
Ah.
see the energy, the faith, the respect, the honor that is given, to their faith. The
Mm.
highlight of the weekend for me, outside of getting to talk to what felt like almost the entire group of 16,000, was there was a live telephone call with Pope Leo. It was historical. It's the first time that this has ever been done. And it wasn't just Pope Leo showing up on the screen and giving a speech or a greeting. It was a back and forth conversation with him. And I tell
Wow.
you what, when his face came on the screen, every single young person in that room was on their feet, clapping and cheering as if they were at the Super Bowl. And just the joy that they express, not only in that moment, but everything that they were doing. They have such enthusiasm, such zest for life, such joy in their faith that I don't know how anyone could be around that and not be hopeful.
Mm.
One of my I guess pet peeves in ministry is when people will say, the young people are the future of our church. They are, but they are also the church of today. And so I think I get inspired by seeing the young people. Sometimes I think as we age, we become a little jaded sometimes. We might become a little tired sometimes, but the energy and joy that they experience gives such hope. I have such hope for what they are going to do. They're going to set the world on fire when they're adults. I absolutely believe that with their faith.
That's a very good reminder. Youth are the present church, not the future church.
Yep. They are the church, the young church of today.
So, our viewers, whatever parish you might be part of, is there a way that they can invite youth to kind of work side by side with the adults instead of waiting till they grow up?
Absolutely. One of the things I love to see is our young people doing the ministries at Mass. You
Ah.
know, uh, there's no reason that a fifth grader or a seventh grader or an eighth grader can't be, if they are a good reader, can't be lecturing. There's no
Mhm.
reason that they can't be in the choir, they can't be ushering, they can't be participating, not as a one, like a youth day. I love it when I go to Mass and there might be one in the choir, there might be one reading, there might be one playing the piano, whatever the case may be. So that's one way. I love that. But also anything that is happening at the church. Let's invite our young people to participate. Are we having a parish mission? How are we going to incorporate the young people into that? Let's don't. Okay, another pet peeve of mine would be when they'd say, "Okay, we're having a parish festival. Let's get the youth to clean up." Okay, what adult is going to want to clean up? And then you want the kids to get excited about coming and taking out trash. How about what are all the jobs that they could do at this parish festival? And let's let them decide, oh, I think I'd like to work the cotton candy booth, or I think I'd like to work the bingo booth. And let's pair them up with adults
Yeah.
and let them work side by side with them. That teaches them that while they are special because they're a child of God, everything's not going to be about that like them their whole lives. And we have to find ways to get involved in what we want to do. So, walking side by side with them, invitation is huge. We all love to be invited, right?
Mhm.
And we love to be asked. So let's ask them, would you be willing? I noticed that you're in the school choir and you went to state, and would you ever think about maybe joining the choir? We could really use your gifts and talents, and what a boost for that young person. One, that their gifts are recognized, and that might be the time that their eyes are opened that, oh, I could serve my church by singing in the choir. I could grow in my faith by sharing my gifts with the parish. So things like that, I think, are really important.
That is, I love that suggestion of inviting youth already to work side by side with adults. And I'm thinking right now, as we are recording this, last night I went to an ecumenical Thanksgiving service in Liberty, Missouri. And there was a choir that did a couple pieces, which was primarily an adult choir, but there was a girl up, they were standing up front singing, who she must have been a freshman, sophomore in high school. And it was just kind of uplifting to see this young person just feeling comfortable singing with all these adults and being welcomed into. So she, just by her participation, probably gave the rest of us, lifted us up, gave us hope. So it's an offering an opportunity to the youth at your suggestion, but that by their involvement, they're ministering to us adults, I think.
Absolutely. I think they do more of that than they realize. I don't think they realize that how the impact that they have on the rest of the adults in the community. Yeah.
That's great. I just want to go back a few minutes. You talked about the Pope, um, what do you call it, zooming in or virtually joining this large youth ministry. And they obviously loved the Pope. And the Pope obviously loved them, that he took the time to somehow work out this virtual link to join them there in Indianapolis from Rome. Um, and he spent, you said, 45 minutes with them?
Yeah, I think it actually ended up to be about 55 by the end of it. It was only supposed to be 45, but it went a little longer.
That's great.
Hmm.
He cares about the youth, and that's motivational for me, and hopefully for all of our viewers too. We need to care.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything else that you were hoping to share with us today about your own experiences of finding hope working with youth and uh, the hope that they bring to you?
Well, I think something that's important to remember is it's not always ministry isn't always easy. Working with young people isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it can be very frustrating. If you think that what you're doing or experiencing should be bringing them further along. And I think what happens for me, the times that I feel frustrated, it's because I'm relying on myself. It's the
Hmm.
times that a lot of my work in vocation ministry is really about planting seeds and walking beside and then getting out of the way and letting God, do what God's going to do. And
Hmm.
it's the times that I think it's very easy to get frustrated because you want to see results. You want to see things happen. And what I think is really important is to realize that we do what we're called to do, working with young people or working with adults, whatever it is that we're doing in ministry, and letting God be the one that takes it from there. When I'm able to let go, and do that, I really feel like that's when things happen. We can't
Hmm.
see what's going to happen in the future, Right now we have immigration issues, and so some women can't get here to visit or whatever.
Mm.
But I fully believe that God is going to make a way. It's going to be like the Red Sea, and God's going to, create opportunities for young people, for all of us to really grow in our faith. So I think if we can remember that God's in control, that's what continues to allow me to be hopeful.
When you say planting seeds, reminds me of it takes time. If you plant a garden or if you plant a tree, you can't expect the fruit the next month. It takes time to grow. And so spiritually too, to expect youth, you said at the very early in our
Mhm.
interview that you don't expect conversion uh, quickly, but that we have to be patient and let God lead rather than my timetable.
Absolutely. Am a person that likes to be in control. I like to plan out, my life, and I think it's going to like this. And I think a lot of people are like that. But you're right. It is about, I really do. That's the ministry that I do is I plant seeds.
Mhm.
And if along the way I get to see the fruits of that, that's great. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because God has called me to plant seeds. And God's in control and God's going to take care of the rest.
There's some kind of, I can't remember a saying now about a person planting a tree. It's not going to bear fruit during his life, but he has hope. I'm going to plant this fruit tree. Somebody, my children will benefit from it, or my grandchildren.
Yes, that's exactly what ministry is.
Well, you're doing good work. I encourage you to keep it up. We're kind of
Thank you.
drawing maybe to toward the close. Any last thoughts you'd like to share?
No, I think I really appreciate you letting me talk. It's one of my favorite topics is hope. I live my life by that. Life isn't always easy. We all
Uh-huh.
have struggles. We all go through things, but it's our faith and hope in the future that gets us through.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing. I just want to close with a few comments again, reflecting back on Pope Francis and his whole naming this year, 2025, as a Jubilee Year of Hope. He says things like when the world is divided by conflict, when people live in terror, when insecurities are rampant, talk of hope can seem like a fairy tale. Not true, says Pope Francis. Talking of hope and living in hope in the midst of reality are what will carry the message forward. This is our call to respond in hope wherever we find ourselves, with our eyes and hearts open to bringing hope vividly and enthusiastically to those who need it most. God is calling us to be fruitful, Pope Francis tells us. God calls you to pass this life on. God calls you to create hope. God calls you to receive mercy and to give mercy. God calls you to be happy. Do not fear. Do not be afraid. Get in the game, he says. May hope be our guiding force always and in all ways. I invite our listeners to pray about how God wishes you to become a pilgrim of hope. Thank you again, Terry, so much for taking time to share with us today. Thank you for being a pilgrim of hope, inspiring me and hopefully inspiring our viewers. With this episode, I conclude this series entitled Walking with Pilgrims of Hope. I invite you to go to the website of Precious Blood Renewal Center in Liberty, Missouri, and view one or more episodes that you may have missed during the past year. They are all archived there. And also check out our website for Precious Blood Renewal Center about other upcoming offerings that will enrich your life in the new year. Then share that information with your friends and your family. God bless you all, especially during this sacred Advent Christmas season.
We are walking, walking, we are walking, walking, we are